Welcome to day 5 of the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge
Here at Quilt in Color. My name is Shalina. So today I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to make quarter square triangles. It's a nice basic block that we use in quilting. It really adds a lot of interest to a quilt, and this tutorial will show you how to make those quickly and easily, and it'll come in really handy for you if you're making the Lupine and Laughter mystery quilt with Bonnie Hunter. And of course, I'll give you the secret word of the day so you can enter to win prizes. I hope that you'll join along with me in my 15 minutes to quilt challenge every day. Let's get started. I've already made the quarter square triangles for the Lupine and Laughter mystery quilt, and so I decided to just make some more quarter square triangles for another pattern. This is a Riley Blake 12 Days of Christmas quilt. Every day for 12 days they give you a pattern for each of these blocks. They also did this last year, and I think they've done it in other years in the past as well. And so if you wanted to switch out some blocks, you could do that from last year's mystery. I probably shouldn't say that because I'm not sure they're the same size, but you can check it out if you want to. And I'm going to make this wreath, which, as you can see here, is also made with quarter square triangles. And to make this, what I did was I grabbed a couple of charm squares. I grabbed a couple packs of charm squares. This one's called General Store, and this one is by Pineapple Fabrics. I don't remember the name of this particular charm pack. Pineapple Fabrics is the name of the company.
I pulled out the green fabrics from these collections and also added some blue just for interest. This will give me lots of choices for fabrics to put onto my wreath.
And then some lighter colors for the corners and the center. So let me set up my cutting board for you and we'll get started. Okay, to make quarter square triangles, you could cut each of these squares into quarters and then sew them together according to the pattern that you want. But personally, I like to sew first and then cut, and that way I don't have to worry about dealing with the biased edges. So this is a straighter grain, and when you look at this, it's not very stretchy. But this part here, if you cut here, it's going to be very stretchy, and it's hard to deal with. So I like to not, if I could, every chance that I get to make quarter square triangles or half square triangles, I try to avoid having to have the stretchy grain all the time available. The other reason that I like doing this method is that it's by sewing first and then cutting. It also makes it more convenient. So instead of, for example, if I'm just cutting these, instead of sewing this to this and this with this and this with this, it's just going to be really complicated. But if I can just sew first and then cut, then I'll wind up with the triangles that I want without having to deal with all those little pieces. So this is a nice way to be able to deal with a big piece and get everything done. So the way to make these quarter square triangles is first to make half square triangles and then quarter them. So this is a bonus for you that you get to learn how I make half square triangles as well as the quarter square triangles. Let's talk about the method first, and then we'll talk about how to figure out what size squares you need to make your triangles. Okay, so basically all I'm going to do now is make half square triangles. And to do that, I'm going to just draw a line in the middle, corner to corner, on the lighter fabric, just because it'll be easier to see. And then I'm just going to sew on both sides of the line here, and then just turn it around and go back down. I like to go both directions to keep everything from stretching out too much, because otherwise if you're pulling this way twice, you might stretch the fabric a little bit. But if you're going this way and then gently going this way, then you'll avoid that bulk. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera just for convenience, and then I'll be back. I'm also going to do that with another combination. I'm using a different number of squares than the pattern calls for because I do want mine to look scrappy. So I have different squares. I didn't have any duplicates of squares in my collection here. I have it in my I have it in the charm pack, but I decided to make my wreath really scrappy and use lots of different fabrics. And so I'm just going to go ahead and sew on both sides of the line here and here so we can talk about how to make this quilt. Okay, I'm back. I've sewn 1/4 of an inch on both sides of the line. I know the thread is light, so it's going to might be hard for you to see. But I did that on 2 blocks. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut them. All you do is just cut exactly on the line.
The secret word for today is shape. I think that quarter square triangle is too easy.
You can use scissors for this part, it doesn't matter, but since I have the rotary cutter out, I might as well just go ahead and cut right here, exactly on the line. Or as close to the line, I guess. Just cut corner to corner. If it's a little lumpy like this, it's fine. Okay. So each collection here made 2 half square triangles. Each combination made 2 half square triangles. Okay, so in order to make 1/4 square triangles, what you want to do, first press it. You can press this, and then what you want to do is to trim off these extra edges here because they're in your way. These things that are sticking out here are called dog ears, and most people just like to cut them off so that they're not in your way. You don't have to worry about getting them. They just add bulk to your seams, and you don't want them. Especially when you have especially when you're joining a lot of different triangle points together, the less bulk you have, the better. So what you want to do to make the 1/4 square triangle is to combine them in a different way. So if you did this, you'd wind up with the same block twice, right? So this is not going to do you any good. You might as well just have made the half square triangle. But if you turn it over so that they're alternating, then you can make and sew from corner to corner. You can see that you're going to make a 1/4 square triangle that just has has fabric on 2 different sides. If you wanted to make a scrappy block, you could combine a different fabric. Try it this way. And I just hold it here and see what it's going to look like. And you can see that it's going to make a nice scrappy fabric, a nice scrappy 1/4 inch square. Now you may be wondering how to make a 1/4 inch square that has one side duplicated but not the other sides. And in order to do that, you do have to make 2 of these, which we have. But what you would do is to have another one where you would have one that has one fabric, and then say this is the one that you want to be constant. You'd have one that's the same and one that's different. When you're combining them, you'll have that different fabric here. You're going to have more than one charm square for this, or you'll have to have more than one square, and then you'll be able to do that way. You'll need to make a different half square triangle, one with this fabric and one with a different fabric, and then when you combine them, you'll have something that looks more like what the mystery quilt looks like. It has the 2 of the same and 2 different. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and make these. I didn't press this one. I didn't press any of them, but I didn't even finger press this one, so let's do that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just sew this part into a 1/4 square triangle. Now, pressing is important here because you do want to make sure that your seams are going in the right direction. So for me, I'm pressing these in one direction. You want to press this fabric in if you're pressing this fabric this way, you want to press this fabric this way so that the seams will nest. So you can see that if you just put them next to each other, they kind of lock, and it keeps them together. And that actually helps keep them together and makes it easier to sew. Let me press all these properly then. And it really doesn't matter which way you're pressing. The big thing is that you are alternating the seam. So this one's going this way, that one's going that way, so they kind of lock. So if you like pull on each other a little bit, you will. If you pull too hard, it'll get loose. But if you can see that this fold is keeping this fabric from going this way. This fold is keeping this fabric from going this way, and this fold is keeping this fabric from going that way. And together, they kind of nest with each other and hold both of them, keep them in place. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line here. When you're pressing these with an iron, you want to make sure that you're careful that you're not stretching them. So just make sure you press and don't move the iron around. And because I don't want two of the same blocks, I'm just going to make another half square triangle set so that I can have more mix and match and have my triangles go all over the quilt. So I'm just going to make another half square triangle set. Okay, I'm back. I've gone ahead and sewn my quarter square triangles. So here, when I'm going down sewing, the first seam that I do is the one that's going upwards because I can watch it while I'm sewing. The one that's going down, the feed dogs are going to keep it going down anyway, so that's the first seam that I sew. And then the second one, since everything's already secure in place, I can sew it the other way and it's fine. And it's fine that it's going a different direction. Okay, so now I have my quarter square triangles done. So all I have to do is just cut these on the line. And each one gives you 4 quarter square triangles. Looks like I didn't nest them properly, so they're not, the seams are not exactly on the corner, which is my fault. I just was too anxious to get them done. But it's something that, obviously, if you're just careful, I didn't nest properly, so I'll just have to be more careful in future ones. I'm going to leave these. These are fine. They don't have to be exactly right. And if you nest these properly, you won't have this problem that I did with the seams not exactly matching, but I'm fine with that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, and then for the next batch, instead of sewing these together and having 4 of the same squares, I'm going to, and you can use scissors as well to cut instead of a rotary cutter. Either way, it works just fine. And then this will be the same thing where you would take, if I can take that apart here, there we go. I can take this one and this one, put them together, and then I'll wind up with 2 triangles that look 2 quarter square squares that look like this. And you can see there's a nice variety of the different fabrics together. These still duplicate, but then these are different, and so they'll add a different dimension to the quilt. I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of the squares off camera, and I'll be back. But let's talk about how to decide what size square to make. So if your directions say take this size square and cut it into quarters, so usually the pattern will tell you how to do it, right? But if the block says cut this size square and cut it in half diagonally twice to make the triangles, then you can do this. It's the same difference, right? Whether you're cutting first or sewing first, it's still going to give you the same size. So usually that is just fine. If you're making your own pattern, there's a chart. For the triangles, the square is 7/8 of an inch bigger than the square to make, say you wanted to sew a square and a triangle together. This is a 5.5 inch square, right? And when it's finished, it's going to be a 5 inch square. So this half square triangle that you want to put next to it has to be 7/8 of an inch bigger than this one in order for them to wind up being the same size. So the formula is a finished size plus 7/8 to make a half square triangle. But for a quarter square triangle, you're sewing it twice, right? So you're going to wind up having two seams that are dividing the square, and so the formula is different for a quarter square triangle than it is for the half square triangle. You can see that the quarter square triangle is smaller than the half square triangle. Move this out of the way so you can see. There are other quilters who have made charts for you. The biggest thing when you're choosing a chart is you want to look at what the strategy is that person who made the chart made. Some people like to make sure that they're cutting exactly what they need to cut, and so they don't have to trim. And so then, for example, this will say 7/8 of an inch, right? And so if it has an 1/8 of an inch, chances are they're cutting exact sizes. But if they tell you to cut something to the whole inch, then that means that they're rounding up and then expecting you to trim afterward. So you do want to be careful about making sure that the strategy that the person who made the chart is using is the same strategy you would use. So if you want to trim, then you don't want somebody with exact measurements, and if you want exact measurements, you don't want to use a chart that expects you to trim. And I'll make a chart for you that has both of those sizes, so you can choose which size you want to use. It'll be on my Ko-Fi page, and I'm not sure that I'll have time to put it together today, but eventually I will make sure that I put it in the, I'll make sure that I give you a link to that when it's ready. There's also a chart, there's already a chart there that shows you how to cut the sizes of the triangles for the side setting triangles and the corner triangles to put a quilt on point, so you can look at that as well if you haven't gotten a chance to get that already. So the neat thing about this block is that you can trim it on all sides, and it's very forgiving because of that. So if you are just making an estimate, you can just estimate, and as long as you're estimating bigger than what you need, you should be able to just go ahead and do it. So what I like to do sometimes, if I'm too lazy to pick up the chart, is to just estimate, trim it down, and just make us one sample block, estimate, and then see what wound up happening. And then if it's the right size, then I know what size to cut the rest of the blocks. Then I know that I need to make the rest of the blocks a little bit smaller so that I don't waste as much fabric. Here you can see that this particular set of charm squares, this charm is a lot smaller than this other one on the bottom, and it's fine. We're gonna go ahead and trim it anyway. So chances are this block will be just fine, even though they're not exactly the same size. I can either center these two together, which is probably what I'll do just to make sure. And it'll work out okay either way. So I'll just go ahead and sew now from corner to corner. If I square, so these again, I'm going to wind up with 4 triangles that look the same. And so what I'm doing is mixing and matching them with the next set. And so now I have more variety in my triangles, in my quarter square triangles. So I took these square and took the leftover half square triangles, and instead of putting them together with each other, I put them together with the next half square triangle and again with the next half square triangle, so that I can have a large variety of squares in my wreath. You can't see the whole thing here, but I have these 2 that are made, these 2 that I'm putting together, and these 2 that I'm putting together. As I'm pressing, I'm looking at the blocks. I'm looking at my half square triangles, and I can see here that if I make this arrangement, then this is what my block is going to look like. But if I turn the thing over, if I turn my half square triangle the other direction, I can see this is what my block is going to look like, and I can choose which one I like better and make sure I can press them that way so that they are alternating. So instead of pressing them all first, I'm actually just pressing them as I decide which way the blocks go together. And after you press your whole block, you'll have dog ears again to trim for the last seam that you made. You could wait to trim these all at the end, or you can do them half at a time. Either way is fine. I like to trim them as I go along so that I don't have a big batch of trimming at the end. So here it is, all my quarter square triangles from my wreath block. I think they look fabulous. Nice variety of different scraps. Nice variety of different fabrics on my wreath. This actual wreath is a little bit more complicated than just this. You can see here that it has another little thing in the side here. It also has cornerstones to make it look more like a wreath, and so we'll do that. I'll do that later, but I wanted to make sure that I got this tutorial out to you on how to make quarter square triangles. And you can use these even if you wanted to make tiny squares like the Bonnie Hunters. You can see there's a big difference in the size of the triangles that we're making for the mystery quilt, the Bonnie Hunter, Lupine, and Laughter mystery quilt, then for the wreath here for the 12 Days of Christmas. But the process is the same for both of them. And what you would do, I guess I should be pointing to the one that has better seams. There you go. Here's a better seam. So what you want to do is, if you don't like working with these little tiny pieces, working with squares is so much nicer for me. And even if you didn't like the size of the squares and you wanted to go even easier, you can make something big like this and then just trim it to the size that you need. You'd be using up a lot of fabric this way, but you can always use these extras for something else. The quarter square triangle is a really great block to learn because it is used in a lot of different quilts, and it really adds a lot of interest to your quilt. It makes your quilt look more complicated than it really is because you're basically just making half square triangles and then halving them again to make your quarter square triangles.
I hope that you had a chance to sew along with me today for the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge. You can enter to win prizes by leaving a comment to let me know what you worked on today for your 15 Minutes to Quilt. The second way is to make sure that you include in your comment the secret word for today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe so you will get tomorrow's video.